and I am muted. Hi, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Kelly Cohen. I am the director of JumpSpark. JumpSpark drives innovative teen programming out of the Jewish Federation of Greater Atlanta and is one of the 10 communities that comprise the Jewish Teen Education and Engagement Funder Collaborative. We want to thank our friends at Chicago Springboard, Chicago's Jewish Teen Initiative, for inspiring us to create our first ever national road trip featuring 32 universities for all college-bound teens and their parents. We also could not have done this without our partners at Forefront Baltimore and the Teen Funder Collaborative. Our Jump on the Bus virtual college tour includes student-led tours, professional information sessions, and ways to virtually connect with the colleges that you are interested in. New college tours and information sessions are held daily throughout the month of June. Follow us on social media at JumpSparkATL and at our website, roadtriptocollege.org, to sign up for more sessions and to create your own personal road trip. With that being said, it is my pleasure this evening to introduce our moderator, Stacy Kay. Stacy Kay is the owner of campustocareer.net and is serving as the moderator for many of our virtual road trip sessions. Professionally, she works to help college students transition to professional life through networking and job search coaching. She has also created a special Brain Spark series exclusive to JumpSpark and part of this virtual college road trip. You can check out her first article on the website entitled Summer Plans Canceled, Now What? Get Busy. And there will be articles going up over the next weeks of the road trip, so please stay tuned for those. So I want to thank you all again for joining us this evening and hand it over to Stacy.
Thank you, Kelly. Hi, everybody. This has been great. What a whirlwind tour. And I don't have any jet lag, so that's great. I've got a couple housekeeping things. Please put any questions you have for our guest speaker, Kim Roman, in the chat. I've already got a few questions, and if you want to add more questions to the chat, I'll be looking at them as she speaks. Wanted to make you aware of some upcoming events. Tomorrow, the 10th of June, there's a tour, virtual tour of University of Florida at 5 p.m. There's also a Temple University tour at 5 p.m. And on Thursday, I know I'm going to butcher the name of this school because it depends where you come from. There's a 5 p.m. tour of Elon or Elan, whichever you like to pronounce it. You can catch all the previous webinars and college tours on the YouTube channel, which I believe is going to pop up in your chat if you need that. And wanted to remind you that after this seminar today, the screen will take you to a survey. If you could please fill it out and give us all kind of feedback, we'd really appreciate it. You'll also be getting this survey tomorrow in your email, so please take a chance to give us some feedback. Okay, that was a lot. I'd like to introduce to you Kim Roman, Custom College Planning, College Counselor. As you may know, sometimes the hardest part of an application process is knowing where to begin. With the increasing cost of higher education, choosing colleges requires more than just writing down the names of schools with the best football teams or your parents' alma maters. Creating a well-researched and balanced college list ensures that students have a variety of college options at the end of senior year. And again, to help us get started with creating a college list, here is Kim Roman.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for being here tonight. I know you're all very busy and I appreciate your attendance. Over the course of my 21-year career, I have spoken at many, many schools, community centers, and different events, and really haven't spoken at an event much lately because I'm actually pretty busy. But when Amy called me and asked me if I would be involved in this program, I thought, wow, this is something I've never seen before. And I really jumped on the opportunity, so to speak, to be a part of it. So I think JumpSpark's doing a great job. If you haven't attended any other sessions, please register. There's so much useful information being given out. And the fact that students are able to also talk to other Jewish students and find out about Jewish life is really very valuable. So let's get started. Where to begin? What if I told you that college is like Cheesecake Factory? Okay, so bear with me a moment. You go to a Cheesecake Factory, you know, you get that menu and there are so many options. You can spend 10 minutes trying to figure out what you're going to eat. So many good things, and that's what college is about. There's so many great colleges. They have so much to offer, and sometimes you can get confused about, you know, what am I supposed to look at? So I'm going to try to give you a framework to put together a good college list. Let's talk about some educational trends first. So right now, most students are applying for job-related majors. What are those? They're applying for business, they're applying for engineering, they're applying for nursing, health-related majors. Less people are applying in the humanities. So English, philosophy, foreign language, the arts. So if you're applying in business and engineering and nursing, there's a lot of competition to get in. More girls are applying and graduating from colleges. That means that, if you're a boy, you might have a better chance of getting into a liberal arts institution because they're still looking for that 50-50 mix that we like to see in colleges. And if you're a girl that is interested in STEM, you might also have a good chance of getting in where your options may have been less before. 70% of students attend colleges within 180 miles of home, about 3 hours. So, I know a lot of you are thinking about out of state, and I work with a lot of students who do attend out of state schools, but the majority do attend schools close to home. And we're finding that, or we're predicting that that may be more so the case this next year, especially with the pandemic. And that's why this little thing here says in-state schools. So a lot of, we're hearing from a lot of people that they're thinking about staying in state more than going out of state with the pandemic. And here, that means a lot more applicants to Georgia Tech and Georgia, as well as our other state schools. And in Maryland, I imagine University of Maryland and Towson will probably get a lot more applications as well. What you should also know is that UGA is going to the Common Application. And that also means a lot more students will be applying. I'm on a lot of different groups with a lot of different college counselors, and I hear UGA mentioned all the time, all over the country. And then finally, 35% of students apply to 7 or more colleges. So, there are a lot of applications going out there, and that also makes it more competitive. So speaking about competition, let's look at some acceptance rates. Harvard has a 4.5% acceptance rate. You can see how many applicants have applied and how many got admitted. And as you go down with Emory and Georgia Tech and Georgia, you see that more people get admitted. But what you should know is that all the Ivy League schools only accept about 22,000 students. So if you're on this call and you're thinking of going to an Ivy, it's very, very stiff competition. I'm not saying that you shouldn't try. I think most students should try if they feel that their academic profile and their extracurricular profile actually fits that. But just know that the reason that they're so competitive is because so many people apply and there are only so many spots, and they could really fill those spots several times over. So here's the good news. The average acceptance rate of all four-year institutions is 67%. So you're going to get into college, you're going to go to college, but it's in your control. The schools that you choose to apply to is in your control. So where do you start? Knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom. And actually, I'd like to know a little bit more about you. So maybe we could put that poll up to see who's on the call. Amy? So, here we go. So if you could just check those, just so I can direct some of the information to the students and the people that are on the call. Amy, I'm not seeing any numbers come in. Or Stacy, do you have numbers?
No, Annie's running the poll.
Okay. So Annie, let me know if you can, who's on the call, and I'll continue. So yes, the first thing to do is to do a self-assessment. And one of the things you need to understand is, why do you want to go to college? What do you hope to get out of it? A lot of students in our area have always known that they're going to college, and they really don't spend a lot of time thinking why they're going in the first place. So think about that for a minute. And then think about who you are. These are the tangibles. You know that you like certain subjects. You know that you like math and science, or you like English, or you like art, or drama, or film. Those subjects are things that you may want to major in when you get to college. You have to think about it. What about your activities? Are you in BBYO? Do you volunteer? Are you a leader in student government? Do you do Jump Spark? debate, think about those activities and think about whether you would like to get involved in those kind of activities or something like them in college. Okay, the poll's up. I see mostly juniors, parent and other. Okay, I can't remove that. So if someone, there you go, thank you. Okay, welcome juniors, I'm glad you're here. And then think about the communities that you belong to. I mean, you have your Jewish community, but you also might have an athletic community. You know, your team is a community. You might be on the robotics team. You know, that team is a community. You might be on the swim team. That is also a community. So when you think about your interests, the things that you like, and your strengths, the things that you're naturally good at, and you put that with the things that you're passionate about, the things that you really care about and want to do more than anything else, then that often can become your major and lead you to your career. So what do you value? You have to think about your needs versus your wants. So, you know, we have a tendency to say, I need this, I need that, but, you know, do you need a, you know, wonderful dorm room? Do you really need that? Because you're probably only going to live on campus 1 year, depending on the school that you choose. Do you need, I don't know, a city really close by? Maybe you do. So if you do, that should be something that you think about when you're thinking about this college, creating this college list. So needs versus wants, very important. Academic goals. What kind of school do you want to go to? How competitive do you want it to be? Do you want other goal-oriented students there? That's something you should think of. And if it is competitive, how are you going to feel about being, you know, sometimes I talk to kids about the Ivy League or Stanford or MIT, and I say, you know, it's really competitive to go there. You know, you're going to be studying a lot. And a lot of kids will be like, you know, I kind of really want to enjoy school too. You know, college really just isn't about academics. It's also about student life and hanging out with your friends and having late night chats. So that leads us to student life goals. How are you going to make your friends? What are you going to get involved in? Right now, you have a lot of friends that you've known for a lot of years. But when you go to college, you may be going somewhere where you don't know anybody, or you only know a couple of kids. So you're going to have to find new ways to make friends and join different activities to make them. And then finally, career goals. How is your college going to help you get to your career? And Stacy Kay is a very good expert on that kind of thing. Can we put up that other poll? There we go. So I know we've talked a lot about all these different things and what you've been thinking about. So tell me now, what worries you about college? I'd really like to know what you're thinking about. And I wait a couple of minutes to see what you guys are thinking. And Annie, let me know when that's in. Okay. Wow. 70% not getting into a college I want to attend. You know what? I would say that so many of my students feel like they won't get into college at all. So, I mean, not getting into a college I want to attend, that really means that, you know, we have to do a really good job on making the right college list for you so that you have lots of good options and lots of good schools that you want to attend. And then let's see what the other ones are. Oh, can you put it back up for one more second? Not being able to afford the college I want to attend. Yeah, finances are a big thing, and fitting in and making new friends and picking the wrong college and picking the wrong major. Okay, so you guys have a lot. You have a lot. Okay, so we can take that down and let's look at some of these things. All right, so how do you choose colleges? What do you want? It's not that simple. It isn't that simple, but it's definitely doable. So what you're going to do is you're going to use a college search engine. And the top 3 of these websites have pretty good search engines. College Data will not only, the search engine on there is called College Match. And you will put criteria into that college match search engine, like the location and the size and the major and different things that you're interested in, and it will come out with a list of schools that you can research. College data is also really good because there's a part where it identifies whether students get merit aid without financial need, which is, that's the only site that I know of that does that. And that's a very important thing. It also tells you if a school is interested in demonstrated interest, and we'll talk about that later. Big Futures is an extension of College Board. It has lots of things, including, you know, signing up for the SAT and the ACT and scholarship information, but it also has a college search engine. And CapEx does as well. CapEx also gives you a sort of how do you compare with other students as well. I don't love that because it's really just based on scores and grades, but it is useful sometimes. They also have scholarships on that website. College Express can give you a lot of colleges by lists. So colleges with good pre-med programs, colleges, big colleges that can be smaller, different majors, colleges that are known for different majors. It's a good place to look. And finally, the Hillel Guide. It's really a good way of seeing what kind of Jewish population, how many Jewish kids are on campus, undergraduate and graduate, whether they have kosher food, whether they have Jewish studies, classes, minor, major, birthright trips, and all of that. So that's actually a great resource. So you've done this search, and you're thinking, you know, what type of school do I want to go to? You know, you want to go to a four-year school, but do you know if you want to go to a public school or a private school? Do you want to go to a research institution, a big school, or do you want to go to a smaller liberal arts school? What about an art school or a film school or a music school? You know, those are all kind of specialty schools. There's also business schools. There's engineering schools. So think about those types of schools that you might be interested in. Size is something you should consider. You know, a lot of kids that go to smaller schools tell me that they want to go to big colleges. And I'm kind of like, okay, well, that's great, because really you can make a big school smaller. But, you know, your classes are also going to be bigger. So how are you going to get the services you need or get to know the faculty if it's bigger? I'm not saying you can't, it's just a consideration. Location, in-state versus out-of-state, urban, college town, rural. You're going to be living somewhere for 4 years, and you really want the environment to be a place that you want to be. Some kids don't ever leave. Some kids move to that area. So think about the location a lot, and don't just look at the college itself, look around the college, because you want to feel safe around the college, and you're probably going to move off campus, and you want to know what that area looks like. Are there internships, and do the colleges require them? Do they help you get them? Do you have to get them yourself? What about special programs like 5-year bachelor's, master's, or accelerated BS, MD programs, or minors, or concentrations, or leadership certificates, or living learning communities? There's so many special programs on each campus, and you should really investigate them, because sometimes you'll see something and you'll be like, that's it. That's got more than any other college I've ever seen, and I really would like to be a part of that. The learning environment is important. Do you like discussion-based classes? How do you do with lectures? What about hands-on learning? If you have any learning disabilities, student support, you really need to check with the colleges before what kinds of accommodations they have to help support you. And student support isn't just in that way, it's also mental health and physical health. So I always encourage students to look at those facilities as well. If you need somebody, if you hurt yourself, I cut myself the first semester of school, had to take myself to the clinic. Good thing I knew where it was. But you know, also if you need mental health services, that's also something you should check out. Social fit is important. As I said, when you're researching colleges, you should figure out how you're going to plug in. If you're in student government, you might want to be in student government or be a resident assistant in your campus. Many kids want to be in Greek life. What's that like at the campus that you're looking at? What other clubs are there? There's everything from dancing to intramural club sports to cooking clubs. so many things, film clubs, so many things to take advantage of. And then finally, a financial fit is important. Those top tier schools do not give merit aid. And if you're a really smart student at the top of your class, and you think that you're going to go to an Ivy or, even a Duke, and get merit aid, you're probably not. So it's really important to figure out that financial fit and have that conversation with your parents, because a lot of times kids will get into schools and then parents will realize they can't afford to send them there. That's an important discussion. So now that you know what you're interested in, what's important to colleges? So yeah, you're awesome. I mean, we all want you to look awesome when you're turning in your application, and the colleges want you to be awesome too. But there's a lot of other awesome kids. So what are they looking for? Grades and academic rigor is the #1 most important thing that they look at. They want to know that you have taken challenging classes and done well in them. They look at grade trends. They like to see things going up. And they are also looking at things like, if you want to go into business, they're looking at your math grades. If you want to go into computer science, they're looking to see if you have any grades in that. If you're in the arts, they're going to look more at your arts curriculum. So they're also looking at what you're interested in your classwork. SAT and ACT scores, right now, that's still a big divider in terms of a lot of schools will admit you with grades and rigor and SAT, ACT scores, especially the big schools will look for that. Although more schools are going holistic, which means they look at everything. Test optional has been bandied about a lot lately because a lot of schools are going test optional. There's a lot to talk about there, but if you think your scores do not reflect who you are and it's a test optional school, you might want to apply test optional. Just make sure that you ask them that if you apply test optional, will you be able to get merit aid? And also realize that they're going to look at every single other thing that you have to offer with, more critically, because they don't have the scores. Long-term commitment. They're not looking for you to do 10 or 20 activities. They actually would like you to do about 3. And in those 3, do them long-term, have a long-term commitment, and have depth. So, colleges are looking for students who care about what they do outside of the classroom. And they're not looking for you to just dabble. They want to know what you're really interested in. Leadership is always wonderful, because if you're a leader now, you're probably going to be a leader at college, and then you're going to go out into the world and become a leader, and then you're going to donate more money back to the college. So they love that. Character is very important right now, especially with the latest hullabaloo about very rich parents paying to get their kids into college. So character is something that we always try to include in the application through essays, through activities. It's important to be your authentic self in essays and really show who you are. They want to know who you are. Demonstrated interest is important. Demonstrated interest is being involved in the virtual college tour that's going on right now, checking in on those information sessions, going to the college and looking at their virtual tours on the college websites, talking to your regional admissions representative, going to college fairs when you can do that, writing to your regional admissions representatives, contacting admissions or professors or students. All of that is demonstrated interest. Following the social media, Instagram accounts, the blogs. The blogs are immensely informative. They give you so much information about applying. They're also looking for a diverse campus. So they're not going to admit all of the people who have the perfect scores and look perfect on paper. They want a diverse community, and they're looking for all types of kids. To that end, you need to be a college fit for them. Read their mission statements. Those are telling you what they like to see in the students that they accept. And just a hint there, if you're applying to business or engineering or nursing or any of those programs, they also have a mission statement. Look at what they're looking for, because schools like University of Michigan, their business program is looking for kids who are interested in ethical business and want to give back to their community. And then finally, they're looking for money. They are businesses, And if you're a full pay and they don't have to give you any money, you're going to shoot to the top of the list at some schools. If the school is need blind, like Duke, then it won't make any difference. But to the schools that pay attention to need, that could be a factor. So you're going to do, this is the recap. You're going to, oh, I'm going pretty fast. You're going to do the research. You're going to choose colleges based on the factors that you identified, the things that you're interested in: location, size, major, programs. And when you have that list of colleges, you're going to research. I have my students look at a lot of different things. I'm sure some of my students are on the call. They're probably groaning right now because it's a lot of research. But you should know when you are applying to a college what your major might be. It doesn't mean that you can't be undecided, but it does mean that you should look at all the majors and figure out what you might like to major in. A lot of kids will change their minds. So even if you're firm about majoring in engineering, you may also want to double major and major in business as well, or minor in business. So do your research, because there's a lot of really good information online. And they also have minors and all sorts of things that you can take. So the research is really important. You know, whenever adults make big monetary decisions, which is what this is, we often research the different things that we may purchase. And then we sort of weigh the pros and cons about what it is, and we make a decision. So definitely research is important. And part of that is visiting. Right now, not a lot of campuses are open, but virtual visits like this one are going on right now. They're trying to make sure that you learn more about colleges, but as soon as you can visit, it's important to go and see what the college looks like, what's around it, visit a friend, ask them, you know, to meet their friends, see what it's like. And also you can meet with a professor, you can sit in a class, spend the night with a friend. There's really a lot of value in visiting. Likely match and reach. So every college list should have these three categories, or whatever you want to call them. A likely school is where your academic profile, your scores and grades, is in the top end, and that there's more than a 65% of chance of acceptance, meaning that the school is not as selective sometimes. A match is you're pretty much in the middle of their academic profile. And how can you find these out? You can, when you research each school, pretty much you can just put University of Georgia freshman profile, and that will tell you what their average scores are and grades. The match is you're right in the middle, and you have around a 26 to 60% chance of acceptance. And then a reach school is below, it's 25% and below. And usually, you know, your scores and your grades are not as high as many of the people that are applying. But even if they are that high, there are some schools that are always reach schools. All the Ivies, Stanford, MIT, Vanderbilt, Duke, I could go on and on. University of Michigan, UVA, Texas, depending on the major. There's a lot of reach schools. Financial safeties, you want to make sure that your parents understand how much each of these schools are going to cost, and that they're fine with whatever that cost is. There are net price calculators on every college website that will help you determine what the cost may be for your family. As I said, make contacts. Demonstrated interest is very important for some schools like Tulane. They come right out and say it. They're very honest about it. I had a national merit finalist who was applying to Tulane. I have to admit, it was more on her likely list than on her reach list, but she was interested in it and she got deferred. And I said to her, well, it's because you didn't give them enough love. You have to make contacts. The more contacts you make with people, the more informed your why essays are, and the more they know you in admissions. It's a lot easier to fight for students when they get into the admissions room, when they know their students. So contact those regional admission representatives. A lot of those regional admission representatives are on these calls for JumpSpark. So you can meet them then and send them a note afterwards saying how much you enjoyed their presentation. That'd be your first contact with them. in the end, you should have, I think, a good list is somewhere around 7 to 10 colleges, as long as you've got a good mix of likely, match, and reach. And I would say usually 2 likely, 3 to 4 match, 2 to 3 reach. If you have more reaches, then sometimes you have to have more match and likely schools. So here's just a little chart that, once you do all that research, you're going to begin to figure out what are your needs and what are your wants. So here I just put in, a dream school, and this person wants biomedical engineering in the Southeast, pre-med, they want Hillel, less than $50,000 a year. And that's all great. This dream school has everything. They also have study abroad, internships are going on. Oh no, I'm sorry, the need, they are not less than 50,000. They are more than 50,000. That's no surprise. So that's a minus. And so they have Greek life, and at the end, you've got a 6. And if you put all of your colleges in here, according to the things that are most important to you, you'll get some numbers, and it might help you decide which of these schools that you'd like to attend. And then think about your goals for the future. I mean, think about your goals for when you're there and what you want to get out of it, but also think about down the line, what is that college going to give you that's going to help you get your job and career? What kind of networking do they have? There's all sorts of things to think about there. And then finally, follow your dreams, or you'll spend the rest of your life working for someone who did. And that's it. We have any questions?
I'm here, Kim. I'm here. Sorry, I was struck by the quote. Well, that's great. I want to invite people to put questions in the chat, and I already have a few questions, lots of information that you shared. Thank you. The first question, I know we haven't even started making our college list, Kim, but how do we know when we're done making our list?
You're done when you have put things in reach, match, and likely. Sorry, I'm going to try to. Can you see my screen, or is my screen off?
I can see you personally.
There we go. Okay. So your list is done when you have researched all your schools, you feel like you have a good list of reach, match, and likely that you would go to. A lot of kids put likely schools on that they really have no intention of going to. And often when I am with my students, we talk about the list all the time. But at some point, I highlight the likely and match schools, and I say, if you only got into these schools, how would you feel? And if they come back and say, I would feel great, because I would go to that school, I go to this school, I could see myself going to that school, then I think it's fine. If they say, I don't know how I'd feel about that, I don't really like this school, I've decided I don't really like that school, and then you're seeing that the match and likely are not things that they really want to go to, and it really is all about the reach schools, then the list is not done, and you have to keep looking and talking about that. Also, I would say that the list, the college list is never really done till the deadlines are over. I mean, that's my philosophy. If you've applied to a bunch of schools and then, you see a friend and, in December and they're like, oh, I'm applying to University of Maryland. Did you apply there? And then they're like, no, tell me about it. And then they get excited about it. Then go ahead and apply. I mean, why not? Why not? If you really think that that school has something to offer you, go ahead and apply.
We had a speaker on, forgive me, I can't remember which one, if it was Georgia Tech or Tulane, who said, a third of the process up front is completely in the student's control. They make the list, they pick the schools they want to apply to. The middle part, not so much in their control. And then the final part, once they hear from the schools, the decisions, then, again, they have the control to pick the school they want. And we saw earlier on your poll where students were afraid that they'd pick the wrong school. And I think everything you're talking about is, you shouldn't be worried about picking the wrong school if you make the list and take the time to do the research to make a good list for you. That's what I'm hearing.
And also visiting's important, and talking to people at the school, talking to other students.
Yes.
Talking to Hillel, talking to people is really important.
I'm glad you mentioned that because we have an article actually that I wrote coming out on Friday of how to evaluate colleges from far, far away. And I came up with at least 8 very creative ways to get to know the school if by chance you can't visit the campus. So definitely go to the Jumpspark, actually, I'm sorry, the Road Trip to College website on Friday for that article. I have another question. Can you explain how creating the college list might look different for visual performing arts majors, athletes, business, engineering?
Okay, so let's start with engineering. When you're applying for engineering, colleges really want to see evidence in your activities and your classes that you understand what you're going to major in. And by that, I mean, you should be taking engineering classes. You should be learning things on your own, like coding. You should be making things at home, building things, building websites, doing all sorts of things that make you look like an engineer. And sometimes I have kids, and in fact, it happened recently. I had a student who his whole resume was music, and he kept telling me he wanted to be an engineer. And I was like, I'm not seeing that. Like, how are the colleges going to see that?
Right.
And then he confessed recently that yes, he was going to start looking at music. So I don't know that his parents were happy about that because they really probably want him to be an engineer, but his resume didn't support it. I would also say that at least right now, SAT subject tests are needed when you are applying for engineering. And that means that usually they're looking for a Math 2 subject test and a science, physics, usually physics or chemistry sometimes. In terms of arts, again, they're looking for what have you done, with your art? Have you been in a lot of visual art classes? Do you have an art portfolio? A lot of times an art portfolio is part of the admissions process. So when you're creating your college list, you should be looking for what special requirements are there for arts majors, for music majors, for musical theater majors, for actors and actresses. There's often another application as well as other requirements. Film majors have films they have to put in, auditions, all sorts of things. And business majors, I would say, again, they're looking at math, if you've taken any business classes. But also some schools have other requirements for business. For instance, University of Michigan has another application that you have to do. Well, it's a sort of a supplement to their application. And there's a couple of different essays that you have to do. They actually call it a portfolio, but there's extra essays. And some schools like Indiana are direct admit to the business school, or it can be depending on your grades and scores. And other schools like Georgia, you're pre-business and you have to apply your sophomore year. So those are all considerations you should think about when you're making your college list.
That's a good point. Did you want to touch on athletes?
Athletes. I find that athletes have sort of 2 different lists. And I would say also for musical theater majors, they have to have a lot more than 7 to 10 schools because it's very competitive. Same thing for athletes. What happens is we have a list of schools that they're interested in getting into without playing a sport because they're just interested in academically and student life and all that. And then they have schools where they can be recruited and possibly play at the school. Sometimes they meet and sometimes they don't. And every time they do, they go to a showcase or a coach comes to see them play, the list gets adjusted. So it's this sort of constant moving target until a coach there's a relationship with the coach and the coach is like, we really want to admit you. We want to do a pre-read and then, we're going to expect you to apply early decision. So usually it starts out with a lot of schools and comes down to 1.
Great. Well, good news. We have some questions. I am looking in the Q&A, everybody, and I'm also looking in the chat. So don't worry, I will find you. We have a question of what if you don't have a major course of study upon search or application? How would this change the approach to building a list? So I'm guessing if you don't really know what you want to study.
Yeah, good question. Good question. So I use a career assessment with my students called U Science, and it's available online. There are lots of assessments online. Some of them are free that you can use to gain some insight into that. But even then, after taking those, sometimes kids are still undecided, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with being undecided. You can definitely explore different classes and different majors when you get to college. But what I would say is that as you're looking at colleges, then you have to be even more careful to look at all the majors that are offered and what each of those majors are. And again, take a cue from the classes that you're interested in now, and see what you have to take to graduate, and look through the curriculum. And if the classes interest you, then that might be a good major for you. That doesn't mean you have to apply for that major. You can apply undecided at most schools, but definitely you want to see like 3 or 4 or 5 different majors that you would want to take before you would pledge to go to that school. If they only have one, it's probably not a good school to go to.
Right. So again, it comes down to the research. And also I think you mentioned something earlier, if you think you want to do business, don't, accept a school that doesn't have an undergraduate business program, because then of course it's not available to you.
Yes. Okay. And also kids make the mistake of doing that. They'll write an essay and they'll say, that's why I want to apply for business at such and such a school. And then the school will be like, the admissions rep will be like, well, we don't have business here. So obviously you didn't do any research.
Right, exactly. Okay, another question. Is it worth it to take the online college match quizzes?
I mean, I think it's worth doing anything that helps you understand yourself more. I don't think it could hurt. A lot of times they come out with things and you're like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
but I mean, I personally like taking those kind of things, and I really do think anything that can inform the process is good.
I personally would like to add, maybe check the source. If it's Teen Vogue, I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, you know what? I give my students something that kind of is a little bit like that, and it actually comes out surprisingly accurate.
Interesting. So, okay. What are some ways I could distinguish between some very similar schools?
Some ways to distinguish between some very similar schools. Is this person talking about in the end when they go to make their decision?
I'm not really sure. That's all I have for you.
Okay, maybe the person that wrote that could write a follow-up. But I would say that, well, I would just like to say, and I think Rick and many other college reps on these talks have said, there are so many wonderful schools. The idea that there's one perfect school is ridiculous. I mean, really, it's up to you as students to get the most out of each school. And it's up to you. I mean, that's your fate is in your own hands. So I guess what I do is I'd write down the pros and cons of the 2 different schools on a number of different factors and those wants and needs that I had up earlier, and see how they do. And then if they came out pretty equal, I would talk to people. I talk to students, I talk to professors in that major, and see what they have to offer me that might be different.
Okay, I've got another question here. If you apply to a college that's test optional, will you still be able to qualify for merit scholarships?
Yeah. So that was what I mentioned earlier. Some schools you will, and some schools you won't. So like in everything college admissions, in the college admissions world, you have to call they have to call the school. You have to ask them. I think Tulane was on here the other day saying that they would evaluate you for merit aid, but probably not those full tuition ones.
Gotcha.
Those top ones, they're still going to look. I mean, many schools will still look at scores. Denver, I know, is test optional for everything, but it's definitely something to clarify.
Okay, that's good to know. What about, I think you talked about this, demonstrated interest, and especially now that, a lot of kids may not be able to get to campuses. Could you tell us what you're hearing on the ground in terms of what will count as demonstrated interest?
Well, anything that's on the school's website that they're offering virtually. And as I said, look at college data and see if they count demonstrated interest.
Okay.
That's a good thing to do, first of all. I'm a big believer that, getting to know your admissions representative is important anyway, and certainly can't hurt you, and when they go into that room to decide who's in and who's out, if you know that person, they're more likely to fight for you. But colleges know that you can't get to campus. So they are looking at that. Open your emails from those colleges, click on the things that they have in the emails. They are tracking that. Sign up to be on their mailing list, follow their social media, ask questions on social media, follow the blogs, ask questions on the blogs. Life will go back to normal. I'm hoping, there'll be college fairs. Maybe the colleges will come to your high school. That's another way to do demonstrated interest.
Okay, great. All right, well, I have asked all the questions that have been proposed. So Kim Roman, I want to thank you so much for your time. I want to thank everybody who tuned in. And this will be available if you want to share it with friends, or if you missed something, you want to hear it again, it'll be available on the YouTube channel, which I believe Annie has put into the chat. And again, don't forget to take the survey. We'd love to hear your feedback. So thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.